Welcome back to Opening Statements. I'm Kelly Craft, in for Julie Grant this morning. As we listen to the sex trafficking and racketeering trial for Sean Diddy Combs, we are now getting a clear picture of the alleged violence and humiliation Combs inflicted on his victims. Here at Court TV, we never want to forget the victims. No victim seems to stand out more than a woman that went through a lot of the things that Cassie Ventura testified on the stand, and she was also pregnant, about ready to give birth. This is Sean Combs' former girlfriend. Without her, there probably wouldn't even be a case against Sean Diddy Combs. As testimony continues, we don't want to forget Cassie and the courage it did take to come forward and talk about everything that she experienced and went through. This morning, we are bringing you a voice for the victims through Mia, a former assistant who also allegedly endured years of abuse at the hands of Sean Diddy Combs. Here is part of her emotional testimony, and we're using AI technology to bring you these moments.
At a high level, could you describe what the work environment was like when you were working for Mr. Combs?
It was chaotic. It could be toxic. It could be exciting. The highs were really high and the lows were really, really low.
What determined what the environment was like on a particular day?
Puff's mood.
How often did Mr. Combs' mood shift?
All the time.
You can take that down, Ms. Foster. Mia, was Mr. Combs ever violent toward you?
Yes.
What are some of the violent things that Mr. Combs has done to you?
He has thrown things at me. He has thrown me against the wall. He has thrown me into a pool. He has thrown an ice bucket on my head. He has slammed my arm into a door. He has also sexually assaulted me.
Did Mr. Combs sexually assault you on one occasion or more than one occasion?
More than one.
Did you ever call the police after you saw incidents of violence between Mr. Combs and Cassie?
No.
Why not?
For multiple reasons. I believe that Puff's authority was above the police. This was also a time period. This is years and years before social media, Me Too, or any sort of example where someone had stood up successfully to someone in power such as him. Also, I was taught to believe that this fell under the confidentiality or loyalty of Puff's business.
What did that confidentiality mean to you?
That was the most important thing. And Puff had told me that I was supposed to protect him from people because there were so many people trying to blackmail him. So I came to believe that reporting anything was blackmail.
Did you ever go to the police about Mr. Combs' violence towards Cassie?
No.
Mia, besides what we have talked about so far, are there any other times you remember seeing injuries on Cassie?
Yes.
What kinds of injuries did you see?
I would see bruises on her body and fat lips, busted eyebrow, a gash on her forehead, black eyes, things like that.
Still with us to talk about this case and what we heard from the testimony. We just heard rapper and media personality Headcrack. Headcrack, thank you so much for sticking around. One of the things that Mia said when she was on the stand, Puff's authority was above the police. That's what she was kind of indicating on the stand. When we were covering this trial, we still are covering this trial, but while we were there in New York, one of the things defense counsel was saying, there was some information that came in he felt was very prejudicial to Sean Combs, talking about that incident with Kid Cudi and how maybe fingerprints somehow disappeared, indicating in a way that maybe somebody paid off the LAPD to make those fingerprints disappear. Defense counsel did not like that very much. And you hear Mia kind of talking about this. Puff's authority was above the police, she believed.
I agree with her. I mean, when you look at the tail of the tape, right, a lot of times people with money, power, and influence can easily sway things in their favor. I mean, look at all these things that we've been hearing about for all these years, right, that we're just now seeing him semi-brought to justice over. And that only comes from a space to where, you got a little bit of juice, you got a little bit of clout with people who can, throw cups on you or not. And I think at some point he lost his protection and now he's facing the fire for all these things that we've heard about over the years.
And Headcrack, one of the things Mia also talked about is the influence of social media. And she said this was a time when social media wasn't so prevalent. And that is true. It is a different ball game these days and has been for the last several years. But when we go back several years ago, when some of these incidents were taking place, it wasn't as if you could get on a podcast, or they just weren't around, or get on social media and say, this is what's going on. That just wasn't the case.
Well, it seems like, very small, quiet tapping of the drum. Because even when you think about the Kid Cudi car incident, right? There were people tweeting about that as far back as 2012. You know what I mean? But it's one of those things where it's like, oh, okay. And then you just keep going. But then as more and more people start mentioning those types of things, it gets a little bit louder and louder. I think you even saw it in the situation with, the Bill Cosby case, right? We've heard about these things for a long time, but it took Hannibal Buress doing a show in Philly saying what he said one particular night to make more people on social media lean into that and look into that. And then next thing you know, it was a full-blown situation. So I definitely think he has some power and influence over some people. I definitely feel like everybody who was afraid of him for the reasons that they were afraid of him had the right to be afraid, because this man was unhinged. I think he was a person who maybe started out as a good guy, but as more power, more influence, and most notably, drugs got involved. He changed him into the worst version of who he may have already been.
And let's talk about the confidentiality. Mia mentioned that in her testimony. She felt that that was extremely important, and that's why she didn't go and speak out, because she had signed that confidentiality agreement.
Yeah, a lot of times, when you log on to something, anything, you don't read all of the fine print, and apparently she did. And she wanted to protect herself at all costs, so I understand her being cautious. But, and it's so much easier for us outsiders to be on the outside looking in and be like, oh, girl, I would have ran, or I would have, the first time that happened, I'd have been out. But you never know how you're going to react until you're really in that situation and you're close enough to the stove to see how hot that heat get.
Yeah, you really don't. And I mean, you do often hear people say, well, I would have never done this, or I would have stood up. And it's great to say that. It's great. We all want to think that's exactly what we would do in a situation like that. But we're not in it. We're not in it. We're not in it. Headcrack, thank you.
We all feel like we can survive a horror movie because we're not in the movie. It's easy to watch and be like, oh, I'd have went in the other room, that kind of thing.
True. All right, Headcrack, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate your insight as always. As we go to break, we want to keep the focus on victims like Cassie Ventura. She was one of the first alleged victims of Diddy to come forward and speak out. He, Sean Diddy Combs, is fighting the federal charges, but his defense has admitted he abused Cassie. That's what he's guilty of. That's what defense counsel has said. And also, we hope the new mother can turn the page. That's Cassie Ventura. She just gave birth earlier this week. We'll be right back.